I'll click on load in new window. This takes me back to my educator. I'll download the file. Save as, I'm going to save it into my, oh, I already have it here. I'll just overwrite it. Into my downloads. Let's see if that opens up without me having to unlock it. Oh yeah, I can enable it. That's great. All right, we'll enable macros. And here we are. I'll go to the Atlas tab, pull open my instruction sheet. And here is the instruction sheet. Let me just walk through some of this. An input box is displayed. Okay, wait, sorry. Let me start at the top here for those who are not familiar with this. The assignment has a total of 10 points. Follow the instructions, working with string functions. In the ribbon, you'll find a homework tab with 2 buttons. So it's talking about this assignment tab, and there's 2 buttons here. Once you've completed the assignment, these 2 buttons will allow you to test your solution. So those are just shortcuts to the code, right? You can just click on this and it will run the code that you write if you write it in the correct place, which is what it's going to tell you. In the workbook, this is task 1. In the workbook, you downloaded this assignment, you'll find a module named solution. In it, there's a sub procedure named get email address. Modify that sub. Okay, so we're actually going to put our code into that sub to accomplish the following. Input box is displayed asking for an email address. Okay, we can do that, right? Input box, email. Oh yeah, we got that. The text email address colon should show in cell A1. The email address entered by the user should go into B1. Once you've done this, click on get email address, see if it works. Okay, let's try this. So I'll go back to Excel, go to my developer tab, open my Visual Basic, and there is the code right there, so I can see it. Let me double check. Make sure we're in the solution module. So I'm looking up my solution. In fact, let me go ahead and close my other one here. I don't need that one right now. I'm in the solution, double click on that. There's my solution module, and there's my get email address sub and my process email address sub. Okay. And so this says delete the next statement. So I'll go ahead and delete this out. And we are ready to go. Okay, what's the first thing? I have to go back now. I already forgot. The first thing is input box with the email address. Let's do an input box. How do you guys want to do it? Please. Oh, good question. I'm glad you asked that because there's another thing I wanted to go to tools options here to change the font if you want to make a larger, smaller font. Tools options. And then it's on editor format tab. And here's the size and here's the font. Also, I like to check these too, and I forgot about this last time. This auto syntax check. This is saying whenever you get a syntax error, it's going to pop up an annoying message. I like to uncheck that in my editor tab here. But I also like to check the require variable declaration in my options here. So I've unchecked auto syntax check. I've checked require variable declaration. And I just don't think I've done that in class yet. So I like to do that for my code. Yeah, tools options. Yep. Yeah, that's the one. If you get an error here, I'll leave it checked. If I were to type in a syntax error here, what's the syntax error? Input box, email address. What's an example of a syntax error? Sometimes I forget. Maybe something like that. Yeah, see how it recognized an error? I know there's an error with the red text. I don't want this pop-up message every time there's an error. So it's trying to help you be careful, right? It's trying to say, hey, there's an error here. And I just don't like these constant pop-up boxes. So if I uncheck that in my tools options, then when I have an error message, it still leaves the text red. It just saves me a click from getting rid of that window. Yeah, that's all it is. Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah, you bet. Okay, so we're gonna do an input box. Now, what am I gonna do with this input box? If that's all there is, are we done? Does that work? Is that sufficient? No, it's not. Thank you. Let's see. What do we have to do? We have to put it somewhere. Very good. We've got the input box. The second step of this task is we want to put this in A1. So I'm just going to copy this. Email address colon. How do we put that in A1? Hey, that works. Active sheet dot range A1. Love it. Dot value. Let's do it. Quote email address colon quote. Does that work? Ooh, it took it. Look at that. No red. Yeah, good question. Do we really need the active sheet? Yeah. I mean, it's more convenient. It's probably better practice from a coding perspective to be more specific about the sheet, especially when you have multiple sheets. In this case, for this particular assignment, it probably doesn't matter whether you have it or not. I've done it without and it works great, right? If I did it without, I would just take this out here, leave it like that, or I could just leave it in. I think it's great. If I want to be really specific, I could do the code name, right? Sheet one dot range, that kind of thing as well. Okay, great. Question?
Can you declare email address as a global
As a global variable?
variable?
Good question. Yes, there is. Do you want to do global variables? How do you know about global variables?
I got to CS 164, so I was working and building objects for. So I was actually building objects for programming.
That's cool. I like that. I'm okay with that. Did you do global variable too, Jamie? Okay, that works too. You don't have to have a global variable for this, but you can. I haven't, is it public? Is that, it's been a long time since I've done a, it's not, is it private or public? Global? I haven't done this one for, yeah, I think that's it. Basically what that does is if you create a global variable, then multiple subs can have access to that.
Oh, that would have been.
Does that make sense? So if I create the variable here in this, right? If I come here and I say email address is equal to input box email address, right? It's going to take the answer that I have in the input box, put it into the global email, global variable here, and I can access that variable down here. That's a global. Notice where I'm setting up that it's above the sub, right? So I'm putting that above the sub. Does that work? I just typed it below that line, right? I typed it below the line, and then when I hit enter, it just puts it above. Yeah. It just puts it above. Yeah, pretty cool. That's one way to do it. It's not the only way. I wouldn't even say it's. You can put it inside sub too. Okay, so we have this input box. We're going to put it into this global variable. And there's still one more step, right? So the email address entered into the input box needs to go into B1. So we'll come back here. There's at least one more line here. let's stay consistent here with our sheets. And we'll do B1 dot value is equal to email address. That's it. Okay, should we try it? Brother Chapman. Whoops. What if I put a space? It's I don't think it will. At email.com. How about that? That's a false email. I don't know why, but that's what I typed in. So brochapman at email.com is what I put in. And if I wanted to in the immediate window, I could just double check and say, okay, what is email address? Boom, it's got it. So the email address is in this variable. Now I'm going to run these two lines. Active sheet, range A1. There it is. Boom. Worked. There's my email address. Active sheet, range B1. Boom. Got it. And sub. Okay. Now I think it says use the get email address to see if your code works as expected. I mean, we basically just did that ourselves. If I do it again, this is good. Brochapman at email.com. We got it. Okay, so the first one's done. Okay, show your neighbor. Tell your neighbor, neighbor, I got this. Be excited with your neighbor. Neighbor, you're not going to believe this, but it works. I don't know how this works, but it works, neighbor.
So you made it so.
That's right. So I'm taking this string and I'm putting it into A1. I'm taking this email address from the info box and I'm putting it into B1. Right? It's going right to left on these assignments. Okay, let me just start the next one. The process, global variables. Wow, I'm impressed. That's great. Yeah, that's pretty good. So what that does is that retains the memory of that variable even after the sub runs, which is pretty interesting. Okay. So here's the second task in the workbook. Add this to A2. So I'll copy this. I can just copy the whole thing because we're doing the quotes anyway. Actually, let me test that. We're going to put this in A2. So I will do, I'll just maintain our, actually, I'm just going to make this simple. Range A2 dot value. What am I going to put into A2? I'm going to put in that. Position of at colon. Okay, that's the first one. Second task. The ordinal position of the at symbol is shown in cell B2. So it's saying if you entered this email address, B2 should show 6. 6 represents the 6th character of the email address. We just want to know where that's at. Okay, this is a good one. So we're going to do range B2 dot value is equal to, what am I looking for? I'm looking for the number of characters of where the at sign is. What function should I use? Nice. Perfect. In string, I'll start at the beginning. What do I put here for string 1? The email. Yeah, yeah. The email string, which is going to be, what's my variable name? Email address. And the second string is going to be the at character. That sound right? And if I'm not sure, because, let's see, does that still work right now? Can I come up here and do this? Get that. That's cool. So I'm not running any sub right now, but the reason why I can execute this line is because that email address is a global variable. So that is still available in memory to access. Is 11 the right number? I think it is, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, I've got a different email. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. That's it. Okay, that's a good sign. Okay, so far so good. Username is A3. So I can come down here and do range A3. What happened? When? So range A3 dot value equals straight out of the instruction manual, right? Or instruction sheet. Username colon. And let's do one or two more. Okay, the text to the left of the @ symbol in cell B3. So we're just taking that username portion of the email in B3. Range B3 dot value equals left. Nice. Keep going. Keep going. Nice. Okay, good. So you did like at position. So you created a new variable and you stored the number from this function into that variable. Very good. That works too. I'm going to be a little bit lazy. Can I be lazy? I don't want to call it lazy.
Smart.
Smart. Jonathan, that's funny. It's a very thin line between lazy and smart. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
I'm just going to do my function again. How about that? Is that terrible? That's not terrible, is it? You guys can't judge me. Don't judge.
Where are you?
I'm just going to do the exact same thing. Now, do I need to make any adjustments to this?
Yeah,
What adjustments?
I,
Very good. I need a -1.
but
Good question, because the end string is going to return which number? 11. So in fact, here, let's do this. What if I just leave that out? Exactly. If I run it without the 1, what happens? It's going to include the A. Very good. So it's going to include the 11th string, right? That function, right? That expression right there in string, blah, 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 equals 11. Notice when I mouse over my mouse over that function, highlight, it says 11. It's giving me the answer. So it's taking the first 11 characters, and it turns out that at is the 11th character. So if I want to remove that, I do a -1. And that's going to be in this position. And now, well, I changed it, so I have to go back around it again. Now, let me see if I can move this over. When I run this, I can hit F8. I'm clicking and dragging my yellow arrow to that line, hitting F8, and the @ sign is gone. It's just grabbed the first 10 characters left. Okay, is that good enough for now? Is that good enough for prime the pump? Good enough for, I mean, what else is there? I mean, I practically did the whole thing for you. There's one more mid function that you have to do and put in the host name. And that's it. And then once you run that, you go back up to the Atlas tab and you click on submit and you can submit it. Notice, by the way, it will grade it for you and then it will provide
oh,
some feedback. It actually tells you what it does. And notice what it does. It's actually creating a new sheet here. It creates a new sheet and it runs your code and it's expecting to have certain things in it and it doesn't. So it says, oh, this is what I was expecting to have. It's not there. Okay, any other questions on homework, please?
when I went through my sequels, and then comes up with his full name, Old Samuelson. And so like, how does that happen?
There's actually code in the grader
That-
that tells it to use that email. So my original email is on sheet 1. It created this new grading sheet and it used that email to grade you. So it's testing your code using that input.
Figure out the database and like, what's the full name? But that's
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Good. Any other questions?
So, you get the email to show people.
B1 email. Let's see. Let's see. Let me go back here. So B1 is the position. Sorry, no, B1's this one. All I did there for that one is I did the input box directly equal into the email address, and then I used that variable into B1. Potentially you could do this, right? You could take this input box and you could put it right here. You may not even need to create an email address variable. Is that true? That's true. And if we did that, okay, here's an alternative. I'm gonna comment out the global email address, and I'm gonna comment out this one. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put that input box directly into cell B1 value. Does that make sense? There's no variable here. I'm not saving that email address anywhere. I'm just putting it right into the sheet, right? If I do this, let's see, I need another email.
That's something else.
21.5.
21.
It's 21.0.15. Perfect. Once I do that, it puts it right in. So I could do that. I don't actually have to have a variable. The question then is, well, what about down here, Brother Chapman? What are you gonna do down here? How do you get the email address so that you can do all of this fancy stuff, right? I could. Could I do it without a variable? I could. I could say, okay, instead of using a variable here, let's do range B1 dot value. How about that?
No, but.
This in string value. So you're not getting 0 or anything, or you're getting 0? Oh, you're just getting 0? Is there an at sign there? Like in the email address? Just making sure. Just making sure. Are you creating a variable or are you not creating a variable inside your in string function? So before we had it like this. Okay, do this. Let's troubleshoot that. Do this. Do a stop right here. Type in stop right before that. And let me see. I need to create a variable here so I don't mess myself up. Because I commented that one. And then run this one until it stops. And then come up to the immediate window and type in email address. See what's in your email address variable before it runs that line. Does that make sense? So I'm just trying to troubleshoot this to say, okay, before I run this line, what is email? What's in that email address field? What do you guys get when you do that? Does that make sense? What I'm proposing? Just to give me a stop right before that to say, okay, what's in that email address? Do you get that? F8. So if I put my cursor inside the sub and I click on F8, it will start that line by line process.
So the bottom is A4 and A4, we're putting first half the same.
No, I think in A4, we're just putting in this right here, host name.
Um, first-
And then B4 is the domain name, whatever the second half of the email is.
This guy must be, it kind of runs the second one. That's what you're doing. The second one.
Are you using a global variable? So you're going to take this and you have this basically the same thing. And it doesn't return anything on this one?
You just click it, right? So,
Okay, let's do this one. What you can do is you can say, let's introduce a check here. Let's say if there's no email, run the other sub. Okay, so how about that? So we're gonna do a little if statement. This is like a preview to chapter 13. If range B1 dot value is equal to empty string, then call, what's it called? Get email address. End if. Okay, so this is going to check if the range B1, if this is empty, if there's no email address there, then it's going to say run this sub. And it's going to look for this sub. Oh, there's this sub. It's going to run this sub. It's going to put the email into B1, and then it's going to come back and continue to run this sub. How about that? Isn't that beautiful? That's how the call thing works. That's right. So example, if I delete my email address here, I run this sub down here. Oh, because I'm not using that anymore. Let's see if I can replace them all. That always makes me nervous. Okay, so I've replaced those. So I don't have any email address variable in this code. And again, I've deleted my email address from B1. So it's going to go here and it's say, wait a minute, this is true. Now it's going to say call get email address. So it's going to go back up to this other sub, run this other sub. I can put in an email here. Continue to run this sub, and then it goes back to, well, because I had it twice in there, sorry. Maybe it's not the best example. It's going to finish this sub and go back to the original sub that I called. So now it's going to continue to run this second process. Position. Oh, I've got double values here, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then it finishes the sub. That's just an example of how to call it. Michelle, and do you guys still have a issue back there? Okay, we can talk some more after class and see if there's any other specific issue on the homework. But that's good. At this point, unless there's any other questions, I think we should move on to the application exercises.